Terry, how you doing?
I'm good. Jim, how you doing?
Doing well. It's been, what, more than 2 years?
It has. Sit down, people. Let's go.
Thanks for doing this. Just a little, I know most of the audience know, your bio is like 3 pages long, so I'm going to go really quickly here. Obviously, leading the biggest and most influential derivatives marketplace in the world. You've been a leader at the company since 2002. You named chairman and helped take the company public later that year. The first exchange to ever become a public company. During Terry's tenure in the C-suite of CME Group, he guided the company through a number of industry firsts, which have contributed to the organization's many successes and global expansion. In 2007, you led the first merger of the futures industry. It was a great fodder for the business publishing industry at the time, combining the Chicago Mercantile Exchange with its crosstown rival, the Chicago Board of Trade. Following year, you oversaw the acquisition of the New York Mercantile Exchange, which brought the world's largest energy markets into the CME fold. Then 2021, under your direction, CME Group traded 4.9 billion contracts and entered into a partnership with Google Cloud. And before joining CME, you were president of TDA Trading. In 2003, President George Bush appointed you as a member of the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, position you held until 2013. You're also the co-chair of the Mayo Clinic Greater Chicago Leadership Council, and vice chairman of the CME Group Foundation. That's just part of the bio. So welcome.
Thank you.
Obviously, let's just get right into it. You run a firm that's obviously hedging risk all the time, but what's the biggest risk you've taken in your career?
Jesus. I've taken way too many, obviously. I guess the biggest risk I took when I was young, I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, didn't come from anything. All my neighbors can become coppers and firemen, and I thought that was my path, and I didn't think anything was wrong with that. It was a great path. I was in school at Wisconsin Whitewater in 1980 when I was tending bar because the drinking age was 18, so you get a job tending bar in Wisconsin, and I got residency, so I was putting myself through school up there, and I met a gentleman, and he said, you got a great mathematical mind, why don't you come on down to the Mercantile Exchange? And he said, you could learn the business. So I had a semester left in college, and I told my mom and dad, I said, I'm leaving Whitewater, and I'm going to go get a job for $56 a week. I actually thought it was a day, but it was a week, $56 for the week. But at the time, I saw something that was, 20%, kind of similar to today, 20% interest rates, 21% unemployment. There was really nowhere to go, and I saw a different path, and I really did not want to be a policeman or a fireman. I'd rather just hang out with those guys because they're a lot of fun, but I didn't want to be one. So I took this path forward, and I went into business, and I convinced my Italian mother to mortgage their bungalow in order for myself to become a member of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for $50,000. And 2 weeks later, I lost their house and a lot more than that, and we didn't tell my dad. We forged his name on the mortgage application that gave up his house. So you can imagine a guy that came from Ireland wasn't too thrilled about what was going on at the time. So that was a big risk I took back then, but I was very fortunate to be successful thereafter and take care of my parents the rest of their lives. But that was a risk, and then in business, I took a lot of risk. When I took on the Chicago Board of Trade in 2007, a lot of people said it never could be done. You can't have the Irish work with the Jewish folks, and it just doesn't work that way. And I'm like, well, why? And they said, by the way, what the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the Board of Trade. You're not Jewish. I go, I am. Call me Duffstein. I'm good. Let's go. And so anyway, Charlie Carey and I were dear friends. We traded back in the early 80s, and we said we needed to get these two exchanges together, because if we didn't, we knew one thing. We weren't very smart, but we did know one thing. We knew that the Chicago Board of Trade or the Chicago Mercantile Exchange would not be in Chicago much longer if we were separate. We did know that. And so we put everything aside and paved the way to put together an historic transaction. So I put my reputation on the line. Charlie Carey, to his credit, put his reputation on the line, and we created the largest exchange in the world by market cap and by business. And we did it right here in the city of Chicago. So I thought that was a huge risk, benefited many. So we were quite thrilled with that.
It truly was a remarkable story, and being a younger journalist at the time, it was great to cover that. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So let's get into it. Obviously, a lot happening in your world. You are watching, you're benchmarking across every major asset class every day. What are the main factors impacting investors overall right now?
Well, there's many factors impacting investors. I mean, you look at what's gone on just yesterday and today alone. I mean, what used to happen over a projected period of 12 months to 36 months is happening in 24 hours. So yesterday, the markets decided they wanted to rally 500 points. On the broader markets today, they're down 500 points. I mean, this is schizophrenic what's going on in the marketplace right now, and there's a whole host of underlying factors that's causing it. Everybody wants to blame high-frequency trading and the technology associated with it. None of that is true. What's affecting this is people are very concerned about the next moment because it's not a domestic market anymore. Everything's international. So if someone catches a cold, we all get sick. It's not just if the United States catches a cold, the rest of the world gets sick. It happens otherwise and comes towards us now. So it's a completely different model than we're all used to. And also, I'm old enough to trade back in the day when inflation was roaring. There's many people in the marketplace, you know, say the average age of a participant is in his mid-40s or her in their mid-40s. They've never seen a downtick in the market they haven't liked because it's always gone up. They never had to factor in inflation because we haven't seen it since 1980. So you got 40 plus years of no inflation. Now you got to learn how to trade markets so they get the gyrations in the market are just something that we've never seen before. So managing risk is critically important. So I won't do an infomercial for CME, but that's part of how we grow because we manage risk. We don't take the opposite sides of trades. You're hearing a lot of conversations today about let's charge no commissions for trading. Now, I don't blame payment for order flow and what's going on with that, but you better be wise enough to understand if you're paying nothing, someone's making money off that trade from you. So there's a lot going on here. So there's more people participating in the marketplace. There's people in the marketplace that don't belong in the marketplace, and I'm a guy who runs the marketplace. But when you look at what went on during the pandemic, gaming accelerated, trading accelerated, the gamification of these things all accelerated. Those are not good because those are uneducated participants losing the $2 trillion that the government just gave them to survive through a pandemic. Ugly things going on right now. And now we're seeing the ramifications of that in our marketplace. So someone might say, if you fell off the moon right now and landed on Earth and you said, what's the unemployment rate? 3.6%. You say, that's pretty good, right? That's historic lows. And you looked at what's the price of products. You go, people are doing pretty well, huh? That's a good thing. And then what's the Fed doing? Oh, that's right. He's doing demand destruction, which is counterintuitive to growth. And he's trying to put people out of work. Why? Because of inflation. So I find this pretty amazing what's going on right now, but no one's saying it like that. They say the Fed has to act like this in order to tame inflation. The Fed screwed up. Why don't they just admit it? Why did I have to say transitory, things of that nature? The Fed made a catastrophic mistake. I'm on the record on many national television shows over the years saying the Fed has a great opportunity to raise interest rates right now to a certain level, so if in fact we get into a situation they got to cut them, they can cut them. They've got this cheap money policy which incents nothing but bad behavior, and that's exactly what we've got going on today. So, you know, the markets, people ask me all the time, why are the markets up 500 and down 500? I just gave you 4 reasons, and there's about 100 more that are applicable to what the markets are doing today. So that's what people are facing.
So what should have the Fed done right away to address this and get it right?
The Fed should have acted prudently and not acted politically. The Fed is an independent agency. That's the most politicized agency in Washington, D.C. And it's not Joe Biden, it's not Donald Trump, it's not Barack Obama, it's not George Bush or Bill Clinton. It's all of them. They all politicize the Fed because cheap money is good for politics. I heard something in Washington a long, long time ago. I know that Tom's successor is here from the chamber, and I listened to a little bit of your comments, but I heard something from a member of Congress a long time ago, and this is applicable through Washington. So think about this statement. Bad policy is good politics. That is so perverse to think that elected officials say bad policy is good politics because it gets votes. It's not good, but it gets votes. That's resonated through agencies in the government, and I think that the Federal Reserve has been politicized to keep cheap money for growth that we probably shouldn't have had. And then now the day of reckoning is coming. So instead, now the Fed's got to act irrationally, raise rates at record levels, and we're not going to have a Paul Volcker type of situation for one reason. We have $31.5 trillion of U.S. debt. We can't service even the debt that we're issuing today. Most of it's issued at a much cheaper rate, but we can't service the new debt going forward at these levels. So I think that the rates will probably cool off in this area somewhere, but inflation might hang around, unemployment might go up, and then you're going to get the stagflation. And I wish I was wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I've been saying that for a number of years, and the factors seem to be playing out. I'm losing my earpiece here, but
Pretty depressing, Terry. Any optimism, hope that you see right now?
optimism. I'm always optimistic. I'm not optimistic about this damn earpiece. I'm very optimistic. I think that there's a lot of really great opportunities. Listen, anytime there's despair, unfortunately, there's opportunities in the marketplace. You know, right now there's different things I see, and I'm careful about predicting prices, but when you look at what's going on in the farm community, I mean, there's massive opportunities in some of these REITs as it relates to farm properties. You know, someone asked me the other day, I host all the large agribusinesses around the world, and you talk to these folks from the National Grain and Feed to the hog producers and everybody else, and it's the head of all these agencies. And they come to CME, and we do it twice a year. We talk about what's going on. And someone was talking about how ESGs are coming into a big part of the agricultural community. The problem with that is the American farmer is not ready for ESGs. He knows how to put so much water onto a crop of grains and grow them that way. He is not a corporate farmer who is measuring this out and can afford all this technology to do so. Now, you might say, well, he should probably get his act together. You know what the problem is with that? If we go all to corporate farmers, you're going to be beholden to corporate farmers' prices. You better hope that the American farmer can keep the corporate farmers honest and always have competition in the marketplace for the price of food, because no one's really talking about the price of food as much as they're talking about the price of energy. Why? Because it's fun to talk, not fun, but we're talking about Russia and Ukraine right now, and that's been the topic of the day as it relates to energy. You know, when you look at the pipeline, Russia blew up its own pipeline yesterday. I mean, how ridiculous is that? I mean, come on. So there's a lot of things that we're talking about, but what we're not talking about is the price of food and what it could be. And we're going for 9 billion people in this world, and we don't have food for 9 billion people right now. And we're going for 9 billion in a very short period of time. So I think there's opportunities in the marketplace. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people got rich off their homes and the value of them, and they spent that equity in their homes. And they maxed out credit card debt, $1.6 trillion, you know. I mean, these are high numbers. And now that, you know, servicing debt is going to be such a different beast. Not for the consumers alone, corporations. And who do you think corporations are going to pass that cost on to? All of us. And that's what they do. So when they go to refinance their billions and trillions of debt that's coming due, because corporate debt, it doesn't go out 30 years. Corporate debt's more short term. Like if we have debt, we have 3-year, 5-year, 7-year debt. When that rolls off, you got to go ahead and reinitiate it because you don't have the billions to pay it back, so you roll it over. Now you got to roll it over at double the price that you were just a year ago. Where's that cost going to go? It goes on to the consumer. So there's a lot going on right now, Jim, in the economic world, but there's opportunities embedded in there as long as you're patient.
The one thing that the war obviously did expose from a business standpoint is how interconnected everything is. And coming out of that war eventually, where do you think the global economy heads? Does it get a little more nation by nation, onshoring, protective kind of policies put in place? What is your prediction on where things head from there?
On a global basis?
On a global basis.
You know, listen, I think there's a lot of flags planted in a lot of countries trying to do protectionist type of opportunities for their own governments, and they have no choice. They have to do that for their people. That might be going back to the bad policy, good politics type of situation, but you got to show your people you care. So I think we're going to see a lot more protectionism and less global markets over the next couple of years as people, you know, you're looking at some of the new leaders, some in Italy, you know, whoever thought we're going to see a far-right leader in Italy, which we are. Good for her. I mean, let's see what she can do over there. But people are only working with so much, and we are intertwined as far as an economy goes. So people are going to have to learn that you can't just protect what you have and think that's going to survive for the future. You know, China needs to open up and become a trading partner again, and having them close has been a big problem, not just for the United States, but for some of the smaller countries that truly rely on them. So I'm not totally optimistic about it, but I've been around long enough to see the ebbs and flows, so I don't think it's a bad thing either. I think sometimes you need a little bit of a wake-up call to remind yourself that, listen, nothing's free, and we've all taken it for granted over the last several years that it is. It doesn't work that way.
Going back to some of the policies that were put in place coming out of the pandemic to address, in the last several months to address the inflation issue, do you think there will be learnings in Washington from what has happened, or is it going to be
From the pandemic, Jim?
from the pandemic?
So do I think, the way they handled it?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'll tell you what, everybody's a Monday morning quarterback, but I'll tell you what, not too many of us have seen this before, so it's really hard to criticize people that were working on a real-time basis on something that none of us have seen. So, it's easy to criticize, especially in the world we live in today. I'm sure I'll be criticized for everything I'm saying right now, but I'm one of those people that don't give a shit. So, anyway, I think that it's really difficult right now with the pandemic, what we should or should not have done. But I'll tell you one thing. When you look at the money that was thrown at a problem, and that's the worst problem this country has. Anytime we have a problem, our answer is always one thing: throw money at it. And that's not a strategy. That's called the hope strategy, and hope is not a strategy. I tell my team that all the time at CME. Don't tell me you're hoping something happens, because hope is not a strategy. So I think the U.S. government went into the hope strategy, and they just threw money at it, and it was unaccounted for, so that was a problem. Would I have done it differently? Hey, who the hell knows what anybody would have done it differently? So people are criticizing Fauci. People are dying. This is serious stuff, so I don't know if anybody could have done it differently or better, other than maybe trying to keep an eye on where the hell the money was going, because you knew there would be scammers out there.
Right. You spent a lot of time. You have spent a lot of time in Washington. You still spend a lot of time in Washington. You've had friends on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, we're in a very polarized world right now. How can CME Group and other companies work with Washington?
Well, here, I like to remind people that hate Washington or hate government. The CEO of the chamber will know this. If you're not at the dinner table, you're on the menu, as they say. So you better pay attention to Washington. You look at historically, like Microsoft and other companies, who Bill Gates said that, listen, Washington is not important. Well, Bill Gates learned real quick that Washington is really important. And they just love hearing those kind of snide comments from a very wealthy guy that they're not important, because they're going to exactly show you how important they are. I'm a big believer in the process of Washington. I like the process. I love this country, and I think it gives me an opportunity. I've been doing it for over 30 years, spending my time in Washington, trying to educate people. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you get comments like bad policy, good politics, and you shake your head. But all in all, I think it's an amazing place. And the problem is, and I'm sure this will be out there, I think we've gotten people in there that are not qualified for the job. And there's a reason for that. Nobody wants to do it anymore. And the reason they don't want to do it anymore is because people will walk out of here and say, Terry Duffy said that, social media is the death of society. And you can all say that, because that's what I feel. But nobody wants to do it because they get criticized to a point where their careers are ruined over nothing. And why would you get a qualified person to becoming a representative for us? And so in turn, you get bad decisions being made on all of our behalf. So that's a problem right now. And it's got to change. And I hate when people say that, so I can't believe I just did. So we got to do something about it. We just have to do something about it and step up. So that's why I believe going there, being part of the process, is part of what I can do. I'll educate. I'll talk to people that I think are absolutely goofier than their day is long, but I'll still sit there and talk to them. Because if I can get one word through, then to me, that's a success. I learned something very young in my career. I was struggling really bad around the '87 crash. And I said to a dear friend of mine, I said, if I buy the market, it goes down. If I sell the market, it goes up. He goes, go talk to Freddie. I go, Freddie's punch drunk. He hasn't made a good trade in 10 years. He goes, I know, but if you talk to that man for 1 hour, he's going to give you 1 minute of brilliance in that hour. I go, really? He goes, yep, I'm telling you. But he goes, it's up to you to determine where that minute of brilliance is in the hour. I'm like, jeez, this is going to be a tough one, right? So I sit down with Freddie. Freddie's all excited to have anybody come into his office. So I said, Freddie, can I talk to you? Sure. Talk about markets. 1 hour and 30 minutes goes by. My eyes are bleeding. I go back to my friend Steve and I said, Nuke, I don't know what the hell just happened. He goes, did you get the 1 minute of brilliance? I go, I don't think so. He goes, what did you say? Did you talk? I go, I didn't say a word. He goes, you got it. I go, what did I get? He goes, you just became a better listener than a talker. Now, don't tell the market what to do. You listen and watch things, and the market will tell you what to do. And I've been able to lead my life that way, especially in DC and other places. So even when I hear some of the most crazy things, I go, oh, it's okay. Maybe they'll say something really smart, and I got to pick up on it, so I have to pay attention. So I'm a better listener than a talker. Now, everybody in this room is going, this guy has not listened at all. All he does is talk because he hasn't shut up yet. But I promise you I'm a better listener.
Looking to Washington, what support do businesses really need from DC? What support do businesses need from DC right now?
To be left alone. I think the CEO of the chamber said it right. We just want to be left alone. I think that businesses are very capable of doing things on their own. Let me give you another stupid example. I'm full of fun facts. So during the pandemic, the American government bought almost 40% of every agricultural product that was produced in the United States. 40%. The average is about 14 to 15% they use for SNAP programs and things of that nature. 40%. That's not healthy because now the farmer, because those are a lot of corporate farmers, are making money off the taxpayer. They're not really creating anything. Well, they got one customer and they're going to buy it no matter what the stuff looks like. So I think that government, I'm a big believer the less government is better, but unfortunately we've gotten more government. I don't know if that turns around, but I think if government stays out of the way, then we do much better. And, the facts are proven to that because we've never seen, at least that I've seen in the last several years, where you've had the White House, the House, and the Senate be one party and the economy flourish for very long. We need to have split Congress. I mean, it's just good to have a difference of opinion so that way business gets to move forward without having to have the consensus of one side. The problem with having the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they're all afraid to make a decision because if they're wrong, they're going to get killed. And they know it. So they don't make any decisions. So you're better off having a split Congress and let business make decisions. And I'm also a massive believer in regulation, believe it or not. I believe that good, smart regulation is the way to go. If you let Washington craft your regulation for you, you won't be in business very long. But if you work with them over a long projected period of time and help shape it, then you could have good, smart regulation that is a global regulator. And, I'll tell you a story. There was a guy that created this company called Facebook, and he called me one time, and I said, I'm only going to tell you one thing. I believe that you'll spend more in lawyers than you will in regulation, but if you craft the regulation, you won't spend nearly much in lawyers fighting Washington, D.C. And that's just how it is, and I think people start to accept that as part of how we move forward, but you don't want them doing every bit of your daily business.
Do you think the political landscape in D.C. right now is open to kind of that discussion?
And I don't know him either, by the way. He just called.
Are political leaders open to that discussion right now? I mean, you have done a lot of work in terms of helping shape regulation.
They are completely open to it one-on-one. They're completely open to it. I was in D.C. last week. I had a lovely dinner with 5 or 6 members of Congress. They're completely open to it. Get into a hearing room, get into a larger group, and they don't even know your name. I mean, they're afraid to say things in front of their peers that might be concerning that they're going to get canceled for their policies of what they're talking about. So yes, I think they get it, and it's no dissimilar to the way the discourse is publicly versus privately. You go in there and go in the Senate dining room and have breakfast with a senator, and then all of a sudden the opposite side of the aisle walks in. These guys are the best of friends, and you're looking around going, Jesus Christ, why don't you do that, for the American people? We get a lot more done. So that is a problem. They're great one-off. They're not great together.
Right. Question from the audience based on energy. Since renewable energy source production does not seem to be the next industry, what do you predict will be? What do you predict will be? And is the U.S. poised to own it?
The next energy source. This is a problem because everybody wants to plug their cars in, but they don't understand how the electrical grid works. This is like fixing a cart without understanding you need a horse still to pull the damn thing. The horse is broken too. So why don't we worry about fixing the grids up to the standards of new fuels in order to get the grids working versus having the fossil fuels do it. So what is that? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to understand that. I just understand that when people talk about electricity and how it goes, what happens to the batteries after they're done? What are they doing to the environment? Every time you plug in, you're using all this different fossil fuel. So what's the next great energy? I mean, hydrogen is something that people are really excited about. Lithium is something that people are excited about, but that's battery. I don't know what the next great energies. I just have the belief that my kids and their kids and the kids after them will figure out these problems through technology from some of the people that you heard up earlier. I forgot what the lady's name was, but she was talking about the NFL and what the different statistics they can have. What do you think our kids are going to have in 100 years from now? The technology they're going to have. They're not going to try to fix the problem of the Earth from the Earth up. They're going to take it from space down. And that's what I truly believe. We don't know how to do that now, but they'll figure it out. So I just think there's a tendency, we just keep investing in technology, and that will promote the next energy source.
Right. One last question, because we're out of time. Suzanne and I talked in the first session about the crime issue facing our cities right now. Where does Terry stand on that issue?
I'm voting for Lori Lightfoot, and I don't want any bad press. Poor Jeff. Boy, man, that guy got smashed. That was brutal. During the pandemic, I was in the office most days, and my employees were working from home, and I got employees all over the world. I get it, we got to keep everybody safe. But now that we're all back and we're in a room like this, and I got people in my offices, but they're in a hybrid model, so they're dictating what they get to do now, and I don't get to dictate anymore. The question is not we're worried about the pandemic anymore, because everybody in this room has probably had COVID. I had it twice in like a week. I got the Biden refund or whatever they call it. So it's just brutal. But the issue I'm getting right now is safety. We can't take the train from the suburbs to the train station, and we're afraid to go to CME. Okay, well, how do I deal with that issue? Mm-hmm. That's a tough one. And I don't want to blame just the mayor, because I don't think it's just her fault. And is it a public-private thing like I heard someone say earlier? I'm not sure that's the answer. I think the answer is, I hate to say this, we got rules and laws on the books. Uphold the damn things. And if we just uphold the laws that are already written, we don't even need to create a new law. Don't create one new law. Just uphold the existing laws on the books. And then I hear people say, well, what about the inadequacies about the color of your skin versus that? And then we should, okay, well, I don't know, charge white people more. I have no idea what the answer is, but uphold the laws on the books. I'm a huge believer if we can give away trillions of dollars during the pandemic, we should be able to give $500 billion to every state in the union to build a facility to hire the greatest people in the world to come in there, psychologists, psychiatrists. Don't put them on Michigan Avenue. Don't put them on Fifth Avenue. Put them in these centers for the United States government. As taxpayers, it would be the cheapest thing we could do to help people with their mental awareness and what they're doing, and also uphold the laws, whatever those laws are. I'm not asking to create new ones. Uphold the new ones, and that will make it a better place for all of us.
Great. We could talk for another hour. So thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Great conversation.